Yep. Uh, Basically, when it comes to the topic and why we decided to make this topic happen, because though companies have skills in hiring and recruiting people, not every company in the domain or in the world has enough skills to retain people in order to let their businesses last long. There are people behind an organization. We already know this, and even more than established enterprises, startups need the right members on their teams to survive and grow. And in our session today, we will discuss why working in startup teams matters and how early stage company pressure and building a culture of trust impact business results. And here I'm welcoming our speaker, Oliver Schulke-Hinde, an HR leader with over a decade of experience across different domains like tech, manufacturing, education, and service sectors. She will help us today to understand more details and peculiarities of good team building and culture building, especially bearing in mind that Oliver Show is experienced in scaling HR infrastructures, optimizing startup processes, and implementing HR technologies into businesses of different domains. Oliver Show, welcome and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Renata Savri, and thank you very much for having me. Yeah.
Yeah, my pleasure to welcome you today. So, prior to making this webinar, we discussed with you what might be the relevant ideas and structure, right, of our discussion. And we know, right, like HR is closely related to hiring. However, HR is not the same as recruitment.
Yeah.
Yet, as an HR executive, an HR strategist, you are in charge of the cultures
Yeah.
inside an
And people.
organization. And
Yeah.
hiring talent alone does not guarantee startup success because you must cultivate an internal environment where employees can grow while actively driving business development in different areas. For instance, McKinsey, a research into scaling young companies, notes that mismanagement of talent, culture, and operating models is frequently behind unsuccessful scales up. And usually, the cornerstone is lack of trust because basically teams that scored high on trust were 3 times more efficient and 5 times more likely to deliver results. Can you imagine? And for sure, these insights imply that even the smartest individuals can fail when the team lacks cohesion, clear roles, or even trust. My question to you is, in your opinion, why do smart and talented people, maybe even stars, still fail inside startup teams?
All right. Thank you very much, Renata. I'm going to be making a lot of reference to my experience, and to be honest with you, startup is very, very volatile, kind of, and sometimes because it takes a lot, it requires a lot, the environment is very agile. And yes, so many other people fail because of a whole lot of things. And I'll just speak to like a few of them based on my experience. And I think because of the kind of environment that startup actually work with, it's very agile. And so it's one person, one role set to do a lot of, you set to take up more other roles. Before you know, you are doing the end to end of a particular role. So because of that, people that come into startup actually fail because if you're not used to that kind of environment, definitely you're going to fail. Because you expect that you're supposed to do a certain role, but coming to startup is a whole lot. You have to do like the end to end. You have to take up other roles. Sometimes you even have to work outside your work hours because that is the way startup are wired. And because of that, people don't feel comfortable with that and they tend to fail. Another one I will talk about is because of the kind of pressure that what's it called? Startup are faced, there's a lot of pressure. And to be honest with you, not everyone can work under pressure. Personally, I don't think I want to work under pressure anymore. And we used to have that on CVs initially. Oh, I can work under pressure. But right now, the kind of generation that we have now in the workspace, nobody wants to work under pressure. So if the pressure is really coming to employees so much, they tend to experience burnout. And to be honest with you, they are going to fail. Another one I would talk about is because of the way startups are wired. There's a lot of spontaneity in decision making. And because if you're not used to startup and you're used to doing things in a certain way, coming to startup, you're going to experience a whole different ball game. Because today the CEO is saying, let's build this. And the other time you say, oh, I think we need to abandon, we need to build something else. So if you can't work in that kind of spontaneous environment, you would also fail. Another one I would talk about is people cannot really adapt. To be honest with you, joining startup like 5 years ago, it was something that actually affected me a bit because it wasn't something that I was used to. So I had to learn to adapt. And I can tell you, not everyone can adapt. Not everyone can adapt. So if you are not someone that can adapt to a changing environment, like startup, the way startup is wired, you are actually going to struggle. You are going to struggle. So that's another thing I would mention. I think basically, yeah. Yeah, again, another thing I would mention is when you join startup, you are meant to do a certain thing, but I can bet you are going to do more. So there's a lot of ambiguity in your role, there's no role clarity, and because of that, you will struggle. So that is one of the major things why people tend to fail in startup. And I can tell you, being an HR person, being in charge of culture, in charge of people, I've had to struggle with this. And these are the reality of what startup is all about. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for the insight. So looks like a lot of efforts always might be put not only by the HR teams, but also C-level management, right? When building the right cultures inside beginners in their field, I mean, startups, just those who are launching their businesses. And okay, we talked already about the trust. However, trust alone cannot be built in a psychological and safe environment. And when it comes to building psychologically safe cultures, it's cheaper to learn from others' mistakes than from your own one. And this is especially true when you begin your company based on a family or friends like model. Kind of running a startup like a family sounds great until you realize that you cannot fire your underperforming cousin. And a in a good example is Netflix, who began as a small DVD by mail business with a family-like culture. And as the company grew, their CEO, now chairman, Reed Hastings, found that treating the team like a family reduced efficiency. And here, the Netflix Culture Doc, this is a specific document that the team created after that, addressed this challenge by starting that average performance would really result in a generous severance package, trading emotional comfort for high accountability. Can you imagine? And basically, all in all, this approach built a highly successful business, though it created a stressful work environment. Olubashu, my question to you, because it's really important for our listeners and for the founders who are on the way to build good cultures, what changes psychologically when a startup moves from friends or family building together to actual business pressure, where we're just team, colleagues, not family, and we need to grow fast?
All right, thank you very much for that, Renata. I think I'm currently dealing with that. I basically, apart from me being an HR working with organizations, I also consult for startups, especially the ones that are just trying to like step into the business world. And one of the challenges I'm currently dealing with the clients is trying to move from the space of being not a family oriented to being having a structure. And I can bet you it has not been a very easy one. Yeah, initially, there's this feeling of we all own it together. We own it together, we started together. But as soon as you want to start putting in structure, then the emotional, psychological issues start coming up. You start having a feeling of, oh, she no longer require us to make decisions for her. But to be honest to you, startup can't continue to be startup. At some point, you need to grow. And I think when you are getting to that level of trying to grow, you get a lot of resentment from those, especially from those that you started with. And one of the things you start having is they start feeling very rejected. They start having a feeling that they no longer feel welcome. And when you try to put structures in place, the reporting line changes. Now you're holding people accountable. There's something called we're going to be doing our performance appraisal. It's no longer based on, oh, I think I know the business owner. Oh, the business owner trusts me. It's not me holding you accountable. Now you no longer come to me for everything. We have a proper reporting line. And with that, they start having a kind of bad feeling. You know, there's already an emotional attachment to the company initially that we hold in together. And by the time you start spreading out those, oh, I think I need to actually outgrow the face of we hold it together. We need to get into business proper. And when you want to get into business proper, structures need to come in. It's usually something that doesn't get easy because you start getting that negative feedback and vibes from those that you actually started from. And to be honest with you, one thing I always tell founders is you can't have everybody together on your team. People have to go. And it's a sad reality. So by the time you start putting structures in place, you tell them, oh, report to your line manager, it becomes a problem. Oh, really? I need to report to
Mm.
my line manager now. We no longer hold it together. Oh, is that how you want to do it? We need to do a performance appraisal. Really? So you no longer trust me? I can't handle this again. You need to review my. Initially, reward could be as a result of how the founder feels. But right now, we have a structure that rewards people based on the inputs they give. So when you start together with the founder and you're expecting so much, and at the end of the day, you didn't get rewarded, you feel, oh, really? But we started together. And the line manager is telling me and telling you, you didn't give this. So because of this, you can't have this. It no longer has nothing to do with the founder. You starting together. It's about being holding people accountable. And because people are supposed to be held accountable, KPIs are set. And by the time they set the KPI for you, you see that, oh, really? Now I have a KPI. It's no longer, let's just do it together. No. So I think that gets to you get to get those feedback. And at the end of the day, to be honest with you, this set of people will actually face out. That's the truth. And if you really want the business to progress, you need to give that leeway for them to really make their own personal decision. They either stand with the new standard they are trying to create and collaborate with you to do the business, or they leave. So I think what I tell about founders is just have to be open-minded. If you are moving from that phase of we are no longer a family to a structured well environment, to be honest with you, people would leave. People would leave, they can adapt to your new work structure. They would leave. So that is just all I can say about that.
And honest feedback. Thanks. Looks nice to be honest, especially the phrase
Yeah,
like in families we have no KPIs, right? So you
yeah,
either a family or you're an organization. You should separate it strictly. And
yeah.
now we know how to build trust and how to avoid the mistakes of family-like cultures in a startup. Yet that's not the full list of challenges a startup faces when scaling. The greatest impact comes from the founders. You already told
Mm,
us about that, and especially founders' behavior. And here is an example. A very famous taxi company, Uber, taxi service company, Uber, under the leadership of Travis Kalanick, the company grew at extraordinary speed. But unfortunately, internal competition, which was set as a rule by the founding management, became part of the culture itself. And former employees described a fear driven management style, political behavior, and even always on pressure culture. And indeed, this is not the kind of atmosphere where you can build trust, right? Collaborate, generate new ideas, and so on and so forth.
yeah.
Albashir, based on your experience, what founders' behaviors or, say, companies' strategies silently damage trust inside the small teams?
Mm. Wow, that's quite an interesting question. And I would start with founders because the fact that they are trying to build something, they tend to actually overpromise. You tend to tell employees, don't worry, they're gonna have this, they're gonna have that. And when the employees come in, to be honest with you, they don't get even 90% of what the founders promise. So what I advise is do not promise what you can't do. Do not overpromise. So these are the major things, major challenges that employees even have while working with founders. You tell them a different thing, they come into the system, they find a different thing. So
Mm-hmm,
basically, I do not encourage founders to really overpromise. Tell
mm-hmm,
them what you can do. I understand that you are in a growing phase. Let them know this company is just growing, and let them know your source of income. Some of these people don't even understand that most of these founders actually rely so much on investors. So if investors is not really investing, there's actually practically nothing more they can do. So because of that over promising, people coming with different mindsets, having a
mm-hmm,
different idea of what they should put on ground. And by the
mm-hmm.
time they come in, they see a different thing. So because of that, you just kill their morale. And those are the things I actually tell people, oh, I think it's that time for me to leave. I think I need to leave. But people start coming in and start going. And again, I've mentioned it initially, there's a lot of spontaneity in decision making in startups. The CEO is doing this today, another person, after people have invested emotionally into doing something, you come in the next day and say, I think we need to hold on that, we're no longer doing it. These things actually, these are behaviors that CEOs actually do that actually some people off. Because imagine me putting in so much effort in something and the next day I say, oh, we are switching and we need to move.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually two people's right? Because a lot of things, psychological, people that will have made research on what they are currently working on, and you coming up the next day and say, oh, we need to just do this. And change is something that everybody should be open to when it comes to startup. But again, these are actually one of the red flags as well in the CEOs and the founders. You can't just decide to make changes. I know sometimes the way they feel also reflects on their business, but these are some of the things that actually turn people off in terms of working with startup. I've had friends that will say, oh, I don't want to go into startup. Startup has a lot of headaches. Oh, no, 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 I don't want to do that. The CEO
Mm-hmm.
comes today, I'm doing this, the next minute he's saying he's doing that. So not everyone really wants to do that. And there's so many people that will have set so many goals for the
Mm-hmm.
week. And because of continuity in decision making, the goals are no longer viable. You
Mm-hmm.
can't even achieve those goals. You have to start setting up those goals. So these things could actually be very stressful for people working with startups. And the CEOs also need to understand that why they are building. I understand the way they are wired, they just need to make decisions and things have to keep running. But some of these employees are not wired that way. So they need to
Mm-hmm.
also consider the kind of employees they're currently dealing with. How would they feel if I wake up in the morning and I say I'm doing this after they've invested so much energy, and you come in later and say, oh, we need to abandon this and move into someone else? And this is actually help people to be emotionally unstable. You are very,
Mm-hmm.
you don't even know what to expect. You don't know what to expect. You are just doing things and you are being careful. And before you know it, people are not giving in so much.
Mm-hmm.
They are careful. They say, okay, I think let me just work up to this for now. Tomorrow the CEO can come and say, oh, let's change our mind. Let's do something different. So because of that, there's a lot of instability in the system. And to be honest, these are actually red flags. These are feedback that I've gotten from employees. And because whenever you are leaving, I try to do an exit interview. You say, oh, why are you leaving? And economies, there's a lot of continuity in the system. The CEO actually wants to control everything. The CEO
Mm-hmm.
wants to be in charge of everything. Now, the CEO also micromanages. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You have employed people that are actually very good and bringing them in, you still want to micromanage. Nobody wants to get micromanaged, especially when you get to a particular level in your career. You want to be
Mm-hmm.
able to take decision on your own. You want the CEO to really trust your judgment to take
Mm-hmm.
decisions. So because of that, also, these are some of the things that CEOs actually do that really turn people off and make them want to be what's it called? The startup.
Fully agree with you. It's like a good point to mention, and thanks a lot for highlighting that over promising hurts more
Yeah.
than hard truths. So I fully agree here, and it's especially relevant to startups who are just on their first steps of doing business, and sometimes in order to motivate people,
Yeah.
CEOs, C-level management, unfortunately promise is something that they cannot implement or they cannot make it true in the short-term future. This is a big failure of any startup here. Yes,
Another thing I want to mention, I don't know if I need to add.
yes.
I think previously where I worked, I've had issue with the CEO being favoritism to some employees, and this actually puts people off. You like a certain employees, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
good to the entire thing that this
Mm-hmm.
guy is actually getting these accolades, and because of favoritism, you tend to reward that person more, even if they're not putting in so much energy. And
Mm-hmm.
that kills morale of every other person in the room because they are putting so much and are not getting the reward they're getting. But somebody else somewhere, because is in line with, he actually has a line, what's it called? A relationship with the CEO, gets the entire accolade. And that is favoritism. And I think this is very common in Nigeria here, in startups in Nigeria. You get a lot of people because of they have an allegiance to the CEO, they have a closeness with the CEO, they get the entire thing. They get rewarded, they get the staff of the month thing and they get all those things. And before you know it, they're not really taking so much responsibility. They are not really putting in so much energy. So for everyone doing the best of their, you just have to leave the system. And again, startup CEOs do not take responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I never worked with any CEO that really wants to apologize. They don't say, oh, they are always right. Even when they don't own up to responsibility. Oh, you've done something very bad, and I think the team should apologize to the team. They want to be the Lord and Savior. They are never wrong. Yeah, they don't want to take
Mm-hmm.
responsibility. So I think CEOs and startup CEOs should actually learn this because your energy is what you bring to the business. And most times the business reflects your personality. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time you come in and you're a CEO that does not take responsibility, obviously you are building a team that doesn't want to take responsibility because you reflect on them. They mirror you. So you're actually building a team that doesn't take responsibility. So that's just the little addition I want to add.
Indeed, any invested energy should be paid off in the
Yeah.
end, especially when it comes to doing someone's tasks for someone's business. And we know that trust is important, right? And avoiding family-like models is crucial too. What else matters is support and recognition, and that's partially related to what you just said, kind of compensation, right? Compensating for the efforts put. And Boston Consulting Group's analysis of psychological safety explains that environment where people feel safe to take risks and admit mistakes kind of supported environment is a top driver of team performance. When it comes to your experience, Labushan, why do some employees thrive on startup uncertainty while others completely shut down? Especially bearing in mind your insight that an employee can adapt to anything. But in the end, why some can adapt, why the others cannot in the end?
I think I previously mentioned that if you are coming from a well-structured environment, right, um, and coming to a startup, you're going to struggle. And I actually had that feeling 5 years ago when I joined startup. It wasn't something that was easy for me. I had to start creating the structure. I had to start creating the culture in the office. So if you are
Mm-hmm.
coming from a well-structured environment and you're coming into that, you're going to struggle. And if you're not used to working in an agile environment, you're also going to struggle. Because startup is we need to do this now and we are doing it now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are not someone that can work outside your work hours,
Mm-hmm.
because that you are not used to being burnout, yeah, you are going to struggle. But some are actually used to this, especially the new generation, the Gen Z. They want to work, they want to get the work done, they like to do research, they really want to like tax their brain, they want to do a lot of, they want to put in the energy, they're very outspoken, they want to say something. That would work. And that's why percentage of those in the startup are actually the Gen Z. Maybe a bit of the millennial, but more of the Gen Z. Some of these things will actually make one struggle, but why some will actually align with that. And that's what I said. If you are just starting up your career and you're starting up with a startup, boom. I think, and that's why you see a whole lot of people doing so well, especially the Gen Z, that are actually used to working in a startup space. They are really doing so well. They are very outspoken. They are very good in terms of research. They are big. And for career progression as well, yeah. Before you know it, they are moving from being maybe they came in as an intern. And for growth, you can easily grow in startup, yeah. It helps your career growth. But for those in a more structured environment, you may have to earn a lot to actually move from one level of what's it called, cadre to another. But for someone starting up a career in startup, if you put in so much, you might actually move in a space of 5, 6 years to a senior management role. But that doesn't work. But yeah, people actually struggle, but people actually move so fast also in a startup space. And the reason is because the environment actually creates room for them to grow. Now, I've mentioned growth. We've had a lot of previous employer, we've had a lot of young people taking up roles that are actually meant for those that have 5, 7 years experience. And this is as a result of the growth we've actually experienced because of the kind of environment that were created in the startup. So yeah, people will actually struggle while some people will grow. But to be honest with you, if you are not used to working in a startup, you would struggle. And that could actually be a thing. Thank you.
I agree. So nothing to disagree with here, especially bearing in mind that, we can invest our energy for someone. The current startup room is enough to get developed their personal in their personal skills, right, hard skills. For someone, this room is not enough. That's why they quit.
Yeah.
Yet sometimes, and in most cases, they quit not because of the environment or say small space, but the fact that you've mentioned that they just got burned out. And McKinsey research reports that 1 in 4 employees worldwide experience burnout symptoms. Can you imagine? Every kind
Mhm.
of fourth
Yeah.
employee in the world. And burnout develops gradually in high pressure environments and is often mistaken for disengagement, but resulting in bad consequences for a business. Here is a good example. Maybe someone of you heard about Hopin. This is a video platform who became a multi-billion-dollar unicorn overnight during the pandemic, where everyone was sitting at home. There was nothing to do, right? And they just saw the videos, right? On the internet. The company hired aggressively at that time, but ignored corporate culture and psychological safety, forcing engineers into overtimes. Kinda, there is a good chance, work more, do more, right, for our business to grow and so on. But as a result, the exhausted team, burned out team, could not pivot when the market cooled, and it forced
Wow.
Hopin to sell its assets for a fraction of its
Wow.
peak. Can you imagine? So
Um,
It's a good example of how burnt out team can really lead to bad results in your business. In your opinion, based on your experience, what are the earliest signs of burnout in startup teams that founders usually miss? Because when it comes to HR is usually a person not only for business but for people, right? And your day-to-day operations are closely related to also psychological tasks and psychological communications, right, with your employees.
Okay, so let me talk about burnout. I'm going to be talking based on my experience. And one of the things that I've known about burnout is it's not something that does happen immediately. It's a gradual thing. And because of the way startups are wired, they practically work in an open space. They do everything open. They will tell you they have an open door policy. Yeah, that's fine. And one of the signs of burnout is that people stop speaking up. And this could be as a result of how the previous person that spoke up was being treated. You know, we use Slack. If you want to make a decision, if you want to make any comments, go to the Slack. If the founder comes and say, "Oh, go to the Slack, drop your opinions. These opinions are welcome. I have an open door policy. I'm always approachable. You can speak to me." But however, what happened to the last person that actually spoke out?
Mm-hmm.
How was the person treated? People just stopped speaking because of how the last person that spoke up actually got treated. And because it's an open space, people also get criticized openly. And that does not align with people. If you criticize an employee openly while I am there, I don't think I want to speak out. I would rather speak out. So what I've done in my previous employer is to actually create an anonymous survey. This is just a way of me getting feedback from employees because I've noticed that because of how these founders are actually wired, it's just a thing for them. They want you to speak out, but when you speak out, you get the negative feedback, and because of that, you don't want to take responsibility to that. You do not want to take it lightly with the employees. Some of them even get victimized. And because of that, what I do is to adopt an anonymous survey to actually get the feedback. And because of it's anonymous, people tend to become very comfortable expressing themselves. So I think one of the reasons why one of the signs of burnout is that people do not speak up. Another one I would have to say is that people also stop taking initiative because you tend to spoon feed people when you create an environment that you have to be the one to do the alpha and the omega. People don't take initiative because when they take their initiative, they might get criticized, and the criticism is going to be open. People just leave it and say, "Okay, let me just do a bit. Let's see if this will also be accepted," and that also is a sign of burnout. What's it called, burnout. And for the founders as well, they do not even at some point they don't encourage people to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
It do not encourage you to speak up. About to do an anonymous survey, and my founder was telling me, I really do not feel comfortable with it, because
Mm-hmm.
he got a very good feedback, and this was actually feedback that we all could relate to. But it wasn't something that actually sat well with him, and he felt he wasn't comfortable with it, and he said, "Oh, I don't think we should do an anonymous survey. I think the staff are becoming this," and I said, "No." It's just a way for us to get feedback from people. I could sign a sign of emotional resignation from employees
Mm-hmm.
because of the kind of job that I do. The moment I see people burn out, I know that in the next 2 3 months, these guys are going to resign.
Mm-hmm.
So how do I come in is set up an anonymous survey to get feedback from them. But because the CEOs do not still want to take responsibility, they don't still feel comfortable with it. And because after this anonymous survey is being shared with the CEO, he still comes to the meeting and opening and he still talks about it. So the students, the staff also feel like indicted, like I don't feel safe. There's this level of unsafe environment that you also create for them, like they can't even speak up. So these are actually signs of burnout. By the time you have a meeting and your entire team are not saying anything, and you're saying, "Oh, I'm open to the feedback," because they know themselves that you are not open to that feedback, they go quiet. Nobody wants to speak. So these are just signs, and there is an emotional resilience that comes with their job as well. You no longer meet deadlines. They come to work on Monday, they look so stressed, and you're saying, "What happened to you?" And they say, I'm fine, but they are not fine." So you can actually see all those things. These are sign of burnout. And people don't even get appreciated for the work they also for the things, what's it called, the time they put into work. These are actually sign of burnout. The environment is already becoming chaotic. People get burnout. You no longer appreciate them. You speak. And the fact that I do not like, one of the major things I do not like about startup is the fact that criticism are actually open. I do not like it. It kills every other person's morale. And before you know it, creativity dies. The environment no longer want them to be creative because you can't even do things outside you, within
Mm-hmm.
you. You have to be someone needs to like trick you to actually do something because you are trying to like fine tune yourself into a system so that okay, so that I don't get criticized, stuff like that. So those are just kind of burnout, like I mentioned.
Thanks a lot for sharing your ideas from real practices and experience. And usually this tactic and strategy of conducting anonymous interviews or surveys, right, of your employees helps a lot. And you
Yeah,
already proved this with your insights on that, especially when you need to convince the management to conduct it in an anonymous way rather than opening up the names. Because usually people, employees, they go under, they live under the fear of being fired, and that's why it's
yeah,
better not to tell that they're exhausted rather than telling that they are, right?
yeah,
Everyone has their own family, and that's why
yeah,
they just need to protect their families with, like, through having a good well paid job, right, rather than saying that I'm
yeah,
got tired, I cannot handle it any longer. Yet this practice of communication with your team is a good one when you'd like to grow ambitious inside the team, right? Because usually ambitious employees are a primer a primary driver of business development.
yeah.
Alabasho, when it comes to your own experience, based on your practices that you've already implemented into some organizations in your career, how do you keep ambitious employees motivated when the company still lacks stability, for example, maybe lacks funding or maybe lacks anything else on their way?
All right. I think we've actually had to practice this with a CEO that I worked with. And one of the things I advised him to do was to offer them equity, offer them shares in the company. These are people that are very good. You can't even afford them to leave. However, you can retain them because you can retain them now with offering them equity and shares, even though you can't afford to pay them as much as they want to earn. But I think offering them equity and share gives them an idea that they are part and parcel of the company. So with that, it's a retainership measure for you. You can retain them and keep them in the system. Another thing I also suggested was to ensure that that's why you see so many founders saying, "Oh, okay, be my co-founder." Okay, the ones that are very good among them that you think that this person actually aligns with your vision and mission, can you offer them a co-founder role? If they understand that they're actually co-founding with you, they tend to give in so much energy and they tend to expect little in return. They tend to expect little. I understand that so many people want to do startup, but to be honest with you, so many startups are also struggling with funding. I've seen a startup where the major investor just pull out and say, "Oh, I really want to do something different with my money. I don't want to invest in your business anymore." And the person will do his own share of it. And at that point, we had nothing to do. We just get some of our best team members and start offering them equity. Start offering them, okay, and we have to get one of the most, what's it called, hardworking staff and say, "Okay, we need to give you a co-founding role." And
Mm-hmm.
because of that, we're able to retain those teams. Another thing is we've actually done a lot of investment in terms of training for them to help them grow career-wise. Because one of the things that I think actually help employees as well is training. Being able to like giving them an idea that you actually care about their career path and give them training that could also help them on the job, on the job. About to interview people and they say, "Okay, what are your plans for your employees?" You do training. So I think it's actually a very big part in terms of retaining people. So these are the things that I've actually used in the past that I've actually, what's it called, in terms of consulting for startups on how they can actually, what's it called, retain their best stance. Even though they are currently struggling right now with funding, they're currently struggling with structures and all. Thank you.
I see. Thanks a lot for those insights. Maybe we can also talk a little bit about the real examples, or at least experience of yours related to cases. Say, probably you've seen startups who lose great people, not because of, say, salary, right, but because of other different factors. Because usually, as we already
Mm,
discussed with you, the reason why people quit the companies not because of their not they are paid
yeah,
badly, right? Or they are
yeah,
paid not sufficiently towards the energy they invested, but because of bad management, bad
yeah,
HR culture, bad conditions, and unsafe environment, right? or maybe lack of trust. So have you
Yeah.
seen startups lose great people, not because of salary, but because of leadership energy or internal tension or maybe anything else? Would be nice if you could give a couple of examples on this and reasons why, based on your experience.
Okay, so yeah, I've had such experience. I manage people, so I've had people leave, not because of salary, because of the dynamics of startup. Yeah, the team dynamics is a thing. If you can't cope, you can't cope. So I've had people leave because of spontaneity in decision making. I've had people leave because of the dynamics in the team. You are doing this today. Oh, we move someone from. Imagine moving someone from sales to project. How does
Mm-hmm,
that feel? Moving someone from a sales team to project team. And the founder says, oh, I think I've seen you in that life. And this is
mm-hmm,
me trying to change someone's career path. So these
mm-hmm,
are some of the reasons why people actually leave. I've also had people leave because of, for role in startup, there's a bit of not having so much clarity in terms of your role.
mm-hmm,
Yeah. Even though you tend to say, okay, you're going to be doing this, but trust me, when you join startup, you're going to be doing something different from what you actually came in for.
mm-hmm,
And this could also cause burnout. Now, I will also talk about the attitude of the founders. Some of these founders, like I mentioned, they have favoritism coming up in the office. They have they reward based on how they feel about a certain employee, not based on the impact that is actually brought into the business. And some of these things are actually the reason why people could actually leave, not because of how they are not being paid. I understand that there's a lot of flexibility in terms of work mode in startup, but again, even when you are working remotely, you tend to work outside your work hours. These are some of the
mm-hmm,
reasons why people actually leave. And people also leave because of even though startup founders like structures, they do not really want to align with structures, to be honest with you. I have worked with founders and I also consult for them. As much as they like structure, they like what structures do. Okay, let me put it that way. They like
mm-hmm,
what structures do, but they do not like structure. They want a same
mm-hmm,
environment, but the process to get to that same environment, they do not like that's being done. So those are the things, and also for statutory remittance in Nigeria, we're currently struggling with that. Some of these
mm-hmm,
founders do not remit that. So imagine, does not do that. Imagine somebody coming from a well structured environment into a startup, and these things are actually usually stated on the offer letter.
mm-hmm,
But the person comes in is a different ballgame. These things are not being remitted. Your pension is being taken from you. It's not being remitted to your pension fund administration. And for 2 years, your tax isn't being remitted. Invariably, the government thinks you are owing the tax, but the company has refused to like remit on your bill. These are the major things. I am speaking based of being a Nigerian, and I'm trying to like tell you the peculiarity of the kind of things that we have here as startup in
mm-hmm,
Nigeria. So yeah, some of these things are not even being done. They don't even. I've worked in startup, and the founder comes and says, "Oh, I'm currently having this issue with my employees. They are leaving." And when we go there to do the whole survey, it all boils down to the founder. It's not the
mm-hmm,
employees this time around. So I think
indeed.
personality of the founder actually speaks more to the business. So what I would advise founders to do is promise, keep to your promises. Do what you're supposed to do as a founder. Do the due diligence, right?
Mm-hmm,
Do your statutory remittance. These are the things that keep people. Do them, get an health management organization to actually onboard the employees. I've seen people tell their employers that they are sick, but they are currently at home, they're not doing anything. Just want to stay at home, and they can tell
mm-hmm,
you they are sick. Yeah, they can tell you they are sick, and you can't verify because you do not have an HMO in place, which is a
mm-hmm,
way of doing the checks and balances. So these are one of the reasons why people leave. I hear you when you say people don't leave an organization because of salary. Yes, they leave because of the environment. And because of the kind of way startups are structured, they actually become kind of toxic.
mm-hmm,
There's a level of toxic that you see in every startup. There's this way of people not trusting one another, people just little things just trigger people because of the kind of volatile environment that they have. People do not even trust the management. I worked as an HR in a startup, and I
mm-hmm,
can tell you to my face that HR, I don't trust you. So there's this trust, yeah, they have this trust level with the management, because there are lots of things that the management what's it called promise and they don't fulfill. And the HR has to be the one fighting for that, and because of the way HR is wired, we are supposed to mitigate between the employer and the employee. Make sure everybody is happy. But to be honest, everybody is not going to be happy. That's just the major truth. The founder feels, oh, the HR is not on my side. The employee also feels, oh, the HR is not on our side. So I think these are just the major issues in terms of where I see currently in Nigeria. These are the major issues why people are trying to leave.
Sounds interesting and reasonable, because if a founder wants to build a good culture based on trust, a CEO, a founder should trust their HR department from day one, because this is the task of HR department, the responsibility of an HR department to build the environment, right? And do not do your micromanagement. You either hire an HR team member, right, an HRD, to help you build this culture, or you do not hire them and you build this culture yourself, right? So it's a bad example of how you can build trust, right, when you hire an HR and you don't trust this HR, right, to build the environment itself in the company. And the longer I work, the more I see how well educated people in different environments built by different HRDs, by different CSUs, good, well-educated people in the teams with great hard skills cannot unfortunately handle day-to-day communications on the team. Happens. And it looks like technical skills can be taught, but unfortunately, emotional maturity dictates
Yeah,
how well a team actually functions. For instance,
absolutely.
also resolves conflicts and gets aligned on their goals and expectations. The books by Daniel Goleman on emotional intelligence basically explain a lot why soft skills matter even more than knowing, say, how Excel works, right, and how do programming and Python and anything else. Based on your experience, Alberto, what's harder to fix in a startup team? Lack of skills, for instance, hard skills, right? Intelligence in different programs, or lack of emotional maturity? What's more
Okay,
challenging?
I think to me, just like you mentioned, skills can be taught. But for emotional, you can't actually do that. And if you really want to work in a startup, you have to be emotionally stable because you're going to see a lot of things. There's going to be a lot of environment. You're going into an environment that will actually test your emotions. And so emotional stability is a thing for me. And because of the dynamics of what's it called startups, the team are actually interwoven, they work together. So there is possibly going to be conflict. And because there's going to be conflict, if you're not emotionally stable, it could be a problem. So I feel to me, emotion is very, very key to me in terms of just having the skills being taught. You have to be emotionally stable. So to me, emotion, yeah, I would say the emotional part of it.
So basically, you support this idea that you cannot unfortunately teach people
You
emotional
can't teach people
intelligence, right?
emotional. You can't. And I think exposure also helps you with managing your emotions. If I've worked in a volatile environment like what we have, an environment that is hot and tight, you have to get things
Mm-hmm.
done now, you have to do it now, kind of agile. You
Mm-hmm.
might have to like get exposed to having people being unnecessarily emotional. But however, you also need to work on your emotions. Yeah, you have to be emotionally intelligent in terms of understanding that it's the work environment that you have now, and it's not just personal; it's about the job. And that's what I tell people. Like, yeah, conflict is normal, but just understand that after the four wall of the office, every other thing goes down. So we are having this conflict because we are all working together. So we have to be emotionally, intelligent in terms of knowing and understand that because we work with people, yeah, there's bound to be conflict because of the kind of environment that startups are creating. Yes, they're going to be emotionally overwhelmed. You need to do a project, you have a timeline to that project, and you have to submit that project. But then you're building an application, you're working with your dev team, you have a, what's it called, time factor is also one of the things you also need to work. So yeah, emotions will be high. So yeah, but you just have to work emotionally intelligent, that's all.
So looks like in the end that, though, bearing in mind that you cannot teach people being emotionally intelligent, right? Because it's their own job
Yeah,
to do the self-development from day to
yeah.
day. It's better and faster to find the right teammate from day one, already emotionally prepared for your atmosphere, for your working environment, for your values, right? For your for your business and so on, rather than trying to find someone from the market and flexibly adjust their emotional intelligence or emotional skills to your environment. It's impossible, right? As practice shows and the experience shows.
I think because you don't know the kind of person you are going to be working with, I think you also
Mm-hmm.
need to work on yourself. You can't tell the kind of team members you're going to be meeting where you're going to be working. Even if your team members already understand how it works for you, but for every other team member you'll be working with, they might not really understand you. That is why you need to work on yourself. You need to be emotionally stable and you need to be emotionally intelligent to understand that Every other person is not like me. I need to protect myself. And I understand because of tightening deadline, just like I mentioned earlier, those things can actually skyrocket emotions. Everybody is trying to meet up their own, you're also doing yours. So yeah, people will have be conflicted, yeah. But you need to understand the fact that it's about the work, it's the work environment. After the forward environment, there's always life after work as well. So it's not something like you
Mhm.
need to hide the emotions and just ensure that you're emotionally intelligent. That's all because you can't even predict how the other person looks like. What if the person is also emotionally high like yours? So you need to also protect yourself and make sure that your emotions are stable.
I see. Thanks a lot for sharing the knowledge of yours based on your experience. And Elwashon, as we're wrapping up our session, it's already the end of it, right? I hope we can highlight the main differences and help today's founders avoid common mistakes when building teams that last. In your
Yes.
experience and to your point of view, what separates startup teams that survive pressure from teams that slowly collapse internally? What differentiate them? Maybe you could highlight some top factors just to show the difference between both and try to help founders get navigated around this.
Okay, so one of the things that I've spoken to founders about is the fact that while building your team, you should also ensure that you build teams that align with your mission and vision. And because someone actually aligns with your vision and vision, it actually helps them to also help you actually grow with you in terms of building your team. And for those ones that would actually grow and scale up, they are the team members that understand that we are in an environment where things need to get done. And we're in
Mhm.
an environment where difficult decisions need to be made and the business needs to run. And we also need to understand that there's don't be emotionally attached. This is business. Those are the ones that go. Just like I made reference to you trying to build an environment that is family oriented and trying to do business. So for those ones that will scale, they would have clarity, even though there's a lot of uncertainty in startups. But for
Mhm.
ones that would grow, they have clarity even in the midst of that uncertainty. There's clarity. And for the ones that can actually tolerate the work environment of startups, they are the ones that would grow. But for those that cannot, I can bet you I've had to consult for a startup 2 years ago, and right now they're nowhere. They've actually folded up because they just can't actually scale up because of the kind of environment that we have. Just so for startups, people have clear priorities. Yeah, people have clear priorities, and these priorities are actually cascaded to the entire thing. So if someone that also bears the idea of understand what the priorities are, they're also able to grow. And I also another thing I want to mention is for teams that also grow, differentiating them from those that collapse, they do not really know what they want. There's a lot of ambiguity in startups. They want to do this, they want to do this at the same time. At the end of the day, you just discover that everybody, we don't even know what we are doing. We're actually doing everything at the same time. So for those that really want to go, they're able to like come up with what they really want and taking it out and say, oh, we don't want to do this now, let's take it off. Then let's just focus on this. Because you can't be a master of all. What's it called? You can't do everything and be a master of none. So that's another thing I would say. For those that also grow, apart from those that will not grow, they also take favoritism out of what they do. Like I mentioned initially, if you really want to grow as a startup founder, you need to take favoritism. You need to say, okay, I want to do business and this is business. So take favoritism out of this. Don't be emotionally attached to the entire thing is business. Attach emotions and just face reality. And in terms of having to have leadership, to let people end the leadership thing. Let them end that leadership role actually. Not you say, okay, because I like this person, okay, go lead a team. Because eventually, someone can be good on the job and may not be a candidate for a leadership role. I've mentioned this several times. You can be good on the job and you're not a candidate for a leadership role. So let people that will hand that leadership, let them really hand it, not just based on how you feel. Don't have resentment. I've had people, just like I mentioned initially, that some CEOs, even based on your feedback, will also resent about you. They might eventually end up victimizing if care is not taken. So take feedback, and take feedback, take the positive feedback. The ones that you are also negative, take it and just see it in such a way that it's not about you, it's just how this person feels. Don't be resentful about a particular employee based on their, what's it called? Based on their comments. Yeah. Because the founders are not perfect, they're human beings as well. So people can actually criticize you. Be open to criticism. But for those that are not open to it, trust me, in the next 2, 3 years, they're nowhere to be found. Even if they have what's it called? People that are willing to really invest in their business, the investor can actually see this because by the time the investors see the level of the way people live, people come in, you keep recruiting every time, it's a red flag for them. So people can actually see that, and investors can see this. As much as you have people that are ready to also take accountability, the founders should take accountability because you cascade all these things to your team members. So you need to also take the accountability. So being able to differentiate what you want, who owns what, and let roles be clearly defined. But this is the major challenges we are currently having in startups in Nigeria. People get employed for hey, getting inside they're doing A, B, C. So it's a whole lot of things, and it's really, really pain. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for sharing the thoughts. So basically, to receive the team for a startup that will really last for a long-term period, for long years ahead, you should really build trust inside the organization, create good environments, have and hire great HRDs whom you should trust, right?
Trust.
When
Yeah.
building this culture, receive regular feedback from your employees, and based on this feedback, already adjust the environment, implementing different tools, ideas, right? And motivate your employees in the right way properly. Growing intentionally emotional skills for your employees, not through their training, but through your own example,
Yeah.
right? So show this
Yeah. As a
example
founder.
starting from you, and people will learn from you. Olvashine, thanks a lot for your valuable thoughts and
Thank you very much
experience
for
shared
having
over
me.
this hour. Hopefully it will help more startups in building safe and respectful
Yeah.
cultures for their long-lasting businesses. So it was my pleasure to welcome you to our session today.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.